What's up, MMA fans? It's Alex Wendling here alongside Nick Corey, and we're bringing you the UFC 268 post-fight coverage. Over 20,000 people in attendance at Madison Square Garden. I hear it really broke records revenue-wise, and debatably one of the best pay-per-view cards of 2021. We had 9 fights on the prelims, 5 bangers on the main card. That fight of the night bonus went to Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler, and then 4 performances of the night. But before we get to all that, we have to talk about the man who this card was centered around, the undisputed welterweight champion Kamaru Usman. Kamaru and Colby Covington went the distance, but Kamaru in the end retained his title. What were your biggest takeaways from this fight, Nick?
My biggest takeaway was that Kamaru Usman is on another level, and that Colby Covington is the second best welterweight on the planet. The whole thing that we were thinking is like will it be a war like the first fight, right? The first fight to me was more like a battle of the egos, you know, in a way. Like the bad blood really got to them both, and they were both like, okay, I'm gonna hit you more and harder than you're gonna hit me. And this time it was more like, I'm already confident. Like, at least Kamaru Usman was thinking, I think, I'm already confident. I already beat you. I got a camp that suits my style a lot better now. So I'm going to be methodical. I'm going to fight the way Trevor wants me to fight it, because I'm going to dismantle you again. Yeah.
Yeah, and this wasn't just a fight for the welterweight championship. This was for pound status. So when they were going in, I remember both of our predictions were we thought someone was going to get knocked out. We both thought it was going to be Colby. And honestly, in that second round, when he got knocked down twice, I thought that the ref was going to call it off, but I'm so happy that he didn't, because it just showed how much heart Colby had and how much he did not want to lose that fight. You could tell in the build-up to the fight that Colby, this loss that he had, the initial loss that he had to Kamaru, was just eating away at him. And when he was saying in that interview that they had talking through the screens, he was like, you're dead, Marty Fake Newsman. Yeah. You could tell how angry he was, and that was not an act. So when you look at the welterweight division now, it's not as if we're going to get another Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman trilogy. Which way do you think that the welterweight division should go? Should we fast track Khamzat Chimaev, or should we look at some different options?
I don't think they need to necessarily fast track Khamzat. I think they're gonna, take a faster approach than other prospects and stuff, but they're not just gonna give him like 1 more fight or 2 more fights and then a title fight. I think like maybe let me see, I'm looking at it here, they're still gonna give it to Vicente Luque, who's probably gonna get the next title shot. That's the only one that really makes sense. And then let's say Jorge and Leon Edwards. That's what's interesting here, by the way. The Jorge Edwards one, if Masvidal wins, he's not getting an immediate title shot, I think. Then he'll need another big win, like maybe against Colby. Like that's the one. Like that's the one we got to do. But if Leon wins, they will give him the title shot, I think, just because he's been calling for it and he says he deserves it because of that long win streak. But Khamzat is coming. Like 3 fights, maybe 3 more fights, and then he'll get it. Because like what are they gonna do? They're gonna give him. He's already ranked number 10 now. I see. They're gonna give him who? He beats anyone above him. There's only 1 more person left to that title fight, right? To beat. It's like I think Neil Magny was calling for it. He's the only one that actually wants that fight, right? The Khamzat fight. He's ranked like two spots above him.
Wants to smoke with Khamzat. That would be an interesting one. He's going to be at High Rollers this weekend, so I don't know if I'll be able to make High Rollers this weekend, because as Nick knows, I got a jaywalking ticket that kind of busted my budget. But if I do, I'll try to get an interview with Neil Magny.
Let's start a GoFundMe.
An interesting matchup with Khamzat. Yeah, right? We need a GoFundMe for all of my tickets in LA, for real.
By the way, they were already chirping at each other, the two, Colby and Khamzat, eventually. That's who doesn't want to see that? They both have striking. They both
like
have
on Twitter.
Yeah, on Twitter, because what were they saying? I don't know what Colby said to him, but then Khamzat chirped back like, "Hey, but at least you'll never see me like this." And they showed the picture of Colby on the floor with his broken jaw from that first fight against Usman. So I think he's preparing.
This was before the second fight.
Yeah, this is before the second fight. So,
yeah, there's one picture of Colby with I think it's at the end of the second round where Kamaru is kind of like on his back facing the other way, just like in such a dominant position after like nearly knocking him out, and all Colby could do was survive and kind of just sit there like this. And I was like, damn, it honestly reminds me of Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa when Izzy did his little like dry hump dominant thing, and I was like, oh, what a rough moment that I know is going to be memed so much, and Colby's going to have to deal with that, because it's not just losing. You do all this work and then you end up losing. You also have to deal with the media, the trolls online. And even though Colby is the biggest troll himself, I hear in real life from many people that he's actually a really cool guy. And I can only imagine like he's going to have to deal with a lot of things, but he'll be back stronger than ever. He's a little bit younger than Kamaru too. So I'd have to imagine that if they do fast track Khamzat at all, it would be with the thought that Kamaru isn't going to retire anytime soon, but he is saying in his post-fight interviews that he is thinking about family and life after fighting. So there are little nuggets that could hint that he might be looking to retire within the next few years. So that could be a reason why they want to, I guess, fast track Khamzat. But I, again, want to see the trilogy between them at some point. I think it could be interesting if Colby continues to get better and Kamaru gets a little bit older. We could see maybe potentially a different outcome.
He'll have to get a lot older for that, I think. What is he? How old is he now? What's his
I
age?
think so too. He's 34. And yeah, just looking at the stats from the first fight versus the second fight, in the first round, Kamaru landed 34 strikes, and then in the first round for the second fight, Kamaru landed 17. And so there's not too much discrepancy, except in, I guess, the second round when Kamaru just completely doubled it, basically. He had 36 strikes to Colby's 19 strikes.
Yeah. So the I noticed something interesting. Like when I don't know if you noticed this, but when Colby was walking in, there was a certain, I feel like, a huge insecurity around him. Like his body language was like I felt like he had no confidence. And then the way he came out in the first round and second, I think even, like it felt like there was just a very big lack of confidence. Like maybe that knockout against Masvidal was in his head because he knows Jorge like no one else. They were roommates. They were trained together all the time. He knows how tough he is. He knows how much he can. He has a great chin, and he got flatlined for the first time against Usman. So maybe there was that. And then the panic shots. Like a lot of those shots were panicky. Every time he was getting clipped, a couple of times he tried to take Usman down, and then he got put to the ground in the sprawl. So I don't know.
Yeah, so what is your thought on that? Because there's been kind of a debate back and forth that in a wrestling competition, the takedown that Colby went for would count as 2 points. Therefore, it would count and make Kamaru's 100% takedown defense not 100% anymore. And then there are some people on the MMA side that are saying, well, technically in MMA, you have to have a little bit more control on the ground. So how do you look at it? Was it a takedown that he got in the first round, or does it not count?
I don't think it counted because he didn't get held down at all whatsoever, like for any amount of time, right? He just like a takedown. Like he got taken down, but it was instantly up. And I feel like one of the things, like when it comes to wrestling and MMA, is that you always need to do something with it, whether it's attempt a submission, I think, attempt to at least advance your position, or attempt to ground and pound or whatever. If you're just laying on top of someone, some judges will count it, that's for sure, but I think most judges won't even count it as even significant. Like control time won't even sway the judges in a certain way if the other person who's on the ground or who's on his back has been dominating that round. You know what I mean? So it's not effective enough.
Yeah.
But
it's definitely fun that we got to see some wrestling, considering we didn't see any last time.
Yeah. But see, we did see wrestling, but it's Kamaru who really, like, in the end, just kept reversing every position and made sure, like, he tried as much as possible, as quickly as possible, to get the fight back on the feet. Because I think he had the feeling he was still getting the better of Colby there, and Colby didn't have anything for him. But then, once Colby started landing those uppercuts and timing Usman a couple of times, I think he did respect his power more, and I think those thoughts started playing in his head, in Kamaru's head, that is, should I just step back? Should I just make sure that I'm on the back foot, like, start countering, start off my back foot, instead of initiating those shots. You know what I mean? So there was a bit of doubt, and at that point, when it was like a bit of hesitancy, that's when Colby's confidence started growing, and he started really going for it. Also knowing that the time is running out, of course, and you know, this maybe my last title opportunities is running me by, at least for the considerable, you know, the time being that Kamaru was in the UFC.
Yeah, because in the 4th round, he did outstrike him. Significant strikes for Colby was 33-23 for Kamaru, and then the champ in the championship round, round 5, he was able to get 3 significant strikes more. Kamaru was able to get 3 significant strikes more. So basically, that round 4 was really strong for Colby. Obviously, at the end of the fight, they showed mutual respect for each other, and I think that's great to know. Just because Kamaru is a national wrestling champion, Colby Covington, a Division I All-American, and they've had some serious beef dating back to when it was really political, and then now where Colby was just calling him a cheater and all this. And there was still a little bit of that in the press conference. Like, Colby went back into that character, but for that split moment in the octagon of just sharing 25 more minutes in the octagon together and the mutual respect, it was really nice to see, considering there was some serious bad blood between them.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, like, a lot of people who see a lot of these Colby interviews, you've seen him break character several times, and he's even mentioned, there was this one famous clip of him walking by and a fan, like, stops and talks to him and asks him, like, so what's your big advice to, like, a 17-year-old trying to make it in the sport? And at the end of that, he does say, like, you know, and he's like, I think the fan was telling him, yeah, you're a good guy no matter what people say, and then he tells the fan, like, yeah, you know, but that doesn't sell, you know, so...
I think you should show this side of you more, the real humble, like, you know? I know a lot of people see that.
That's not what sells.
Yeah, but hey, man, it's more likable, I can tell you that much. Yeah, man. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot.
All right, good luck, man.
Thanks a lot.
God bless you,
Thank
man.
you. God bless.
100%. All of it is an act. The whole thing is an act. And I don't know if anyone caught what they said to each other afterwards, but I thought I caught something. I heard something like, hey, all love or something. You know that this is just business. Like, it's a character. You know, like alluding to that, it's just a character, and I have to do this to sell, and you understand, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. Which is true. I mean, I thought about it, and I dislike that, like, whole persona more than anyone, but in the end, think about it, relativize it. Like, would he have gotten this opportunity? Would he have gotten a rematch even? Maybe he would have gotten to it, you know, to the first fight, but would he have gotten a rematch if it wasn't for that persona, if he was just a good guy? I don't think
100%, because I remember he was on the verge of being cut from the UFC roster before he went into a press conference and started calling Brazilians some rude comment or whatever. So he needed to stand out, and I guess the only way to do that was to be for infamous reasons. But I'm glad that we got to see what we got to see, some wrestling, which segues into the co-main event with Weili. Everyone thought coming in that Weili was going to have a better wrestling game, which I think she showed out, being able to get a takedown in the first round. Rose didn't start out super strong. So how would you sum up what these two ladies did at the 115-pound division?
I think they understood that it wasn't going to end the way the first one ended. And both of them, with that in their minds, thinking, okay, this is what are the odds of that happening again? Were both very methodical, maybe patient in the beginning, trying to feel out each other's game plans. Of course, Weili trying to close the distance, Rose using her length to keep her at bay and striking. And I think, do you think, well, I have a question for you, actually. Do you think that Weili had a wrestling game plan in the first fight? Or is this like a new development that she had in case she would get clipped in this fight again?
I definitely think that the implication of Eric Albarracin at the gym in Arizona probably stepped up her wrestling game, and they probably implemented it even more. But I have a feeling that in the first fight, she was probably ready to go to the ground, but it kind of looked like they were ready to just stand up the whole time. But it's also something that we'll never really know, because the fight only lasted less than a minute and 30 seconds. So that's why there were so many questions heading into the second fight.
The main thing that was in my head the whole time, like thinking about this fight, is Weili was training with Henry Cejudo a lot before this fight. There was all these pictures, and she spent a lot of time wrestling. So I figured like she might have a wrestling heavy game plan, and assuming she thought that she's a lot stronger than Rose, which, you know, kind of arguably maybe she is, right? Yeah, physically, physical strength. But Rose had a lot more experience in fighting off her back, and you saw that the sprawling, and she managed to reverse it a few times, and I think that's what broke Zhang Weili, honestly, throughout the fight. And another thing is, again, you have the Trevor Whitman school that really allows fighters to pick their spots and use their strength towards like the power in their shots at the right time, you know. And whereas Weili, that's perfectly plays into Weili's game plan of like she had to jump in like flurry, and a lot of the time you would see like she would just slip, and she did catch her a few times. Of course, she caught Rose a few times when she slipped her jab and like hit her with the left hook. That was the game plan most of the time, but you know, nothing to really. I think the fight was closer than it should have been. That's what I'm saying. You know, Rose had more advantages in terms of game plan and ability.
Yeah, and you mentioned Henry Cejudo, training with him. You obviously expect that the wrestling will be better when he's in your corner. But also, one of the biggest improvements she talked about was her mentality, because in that first match with Rose, she was thrown off by the boos. So apparently when they were training with Henry Cejudo, he would literally be in the gym, in the background somewhere, booing and saying stuff like, go back to China, and things that the American audience, I think more in Florida, were saying. I think the New York crowd was a little bit more classy. But yeah, she was prepared for it, and I don't think any of the boos really got to her this time. I think she came in much more focused. But at the end of the day, Rose is just so composed in there, because even when she was in those compromising positions, like when Zhang got the takedown in the third, ended the round with some elbows, and Rose was on her back having to dodge fists coming down, backed up against the cage, she was able to stay composed. She said in UFC Embedded that she used to be able to fight like a Tasmanian devil, and sometimes that works because you can be all over the place, but now she's a much more calm, calculated, and composed fighter, and I think that's the type of champion mentality you need. She knew in round 5 that it was kind of a close fight, and she needed to get that takedown.
Oh yeah,
she ended up doing it.
Last round was just clinical.
Yeah, that was a big part.
And the huge difference is, we're talking about the corner, and I loved every single word that the corner said. I think the whole dynamic is perfect. The whole the biggest influence that corner has had on her is like making her believe, and I think she, since the last fight against Weili as well, believes that she is the best, and that's it. Like whatever happens, whatever adversity I have, if I know I'm the best and I can tap into that, that's all you need. That's what you need. Again, like we go back to the Usman Colby fight. I think once Colby realized, I can clip him, I have some success here. And then Usman started thinking, he had some success here. That mental side of sports that is intangible sometimes can make such a big difference. And was it the last fight? I loved like the what do you call it? The organization with the corner between rounds. It's like, Pat Barry, I know you can tap into her mental, You go talk to her first, and then Pat goes, okay, Trevor, your turn now. Boom. Trevor goes, and he's just smiling, he's happy. He's like, hey, you're doing great. Are you having fun? Like that. That's it. Reminding her, like, everything is fine. Everything you're doing is good. I don't want anything from you.
There was definitely like a system with them. Like the first guy was like 15 seconds of just breathing, and then Pat Barry kind of like that emotional security almost, and then Trevor with the technical. So that's a good point. I didn't even really think about that. Whenever they go to the corner, I just like focus on the fighter and try to imagine what they're thinking. But when I do think back to how the coaches worked, they were all in a very close-knit system, and you kind of saw that in all the fights, since Trevor Whitman had three of the fighters on the card. And another thing that came out of Trevor Whitman's camp that I saw across, I think, all 3 fights was those shoulder strikes that's famous Conor McGregor did to Donald Cerrone, being able to change levels when you're up against the cage.
True.
They were destroying those, and I was literally on my TV, looking at my TV like, ooh, just like thinking about my face being like hit that hard with the shoulder. And Rose, like, she might not be that muscular and strong, but she's like bony. I can only imagine how those felt against Zhang Weili, and she quickly got out of that position once she was throwing them.
I was thinking, I noticed her shoulders got bigger though. That's the thing. There was also a lot of talk about, there was this picture about like what she was gardening, and her arms were looking huge. But now I noticed, especially at the press conference, like shoulders grew. And it's interesting you mentioned.
Yeah.
I saw the shoulder
It's getting
strikes from all the
stronger.
fighters, but I never linked it to Whitman. You're right. It was all 3 of his fighters were doing the shoulder strikes. Shit, man. Like, what is he doing in there?
Yeah.
Something
They
about
definitely showed out on the shoulder strikes. And when we think back, they put the camera on Mackenzie Dern, who just lost to Marina Rodriguez. So now we have all these different options to talk about with the strawweight division. I remember Dana White said yesterday, someone asked about Carla Esparza, and he basically said, "Oh, we got another option."
Yeah,
It's not smart to wait around for a fight. So he seems kind of salty with Carla Esparza, who is deserving of the title fight. But if you don't have the Dana White privilege and you're pissing him off by not taking fights that he wants you to take first, it seems like he wants to go a different route. And either matchup with Marina Rodriguez or even Joanna, that they would be so interesting. But which way do you think it'll end up going?
It's gonna end up being Joanna, because here's a tendency for the UFC to start suddenly putting fighters that are inactive and start putting them slowly in the spotlight and probably telling them, hey, do more interviews, like that. Or their management starts saying, hey, start doing more interviews now. Start calling for it. And all Joanna's been saying, like, that's coming back. I'm only coming back for title fights. I'm only coming back for big paychecks. I want pay-per-view points. When do you get pay-per-view points? When you're fighting for a title, or you're headlining a pay-per-view for a BMF belt. Like that's so. And based on that interview, I'm glad you watched that interview, because I was gonna bring it up too, the Dana White interview. He's not keen on giving it to Carly yet. One thing I was thinking is, will he do a title eliminator, a first place contender match between Esparza and Joanna? But then the way Joanna's been answering questions in interviews, it doesn't allude to the fact that she's gonna fight for anything but the title. So I think they're gonna give her one last shot, and then they're gonna. If she doesn't win, they're gonna part ways. Not because they want to cut her, but more like it doesn't seem like Joanna's interested in anything but title fights right now, or going down that ladder again. It's gonna
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to see whatever happens in the strawweight division, because it's my favorite division. It's so action-packed. These girls are freaking tiny, powerful beasts. But now we have to talk about the people's main event. Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. They go the distance, and they became $50,000 richer last night with the fight of the night bonus. Well deserved. They both were transported to the hospital directly after the fight. They didn't do any media, so we don't have any answers on what they want next. But obviously Gaethje is looking at the title next. But Dana even said that, I don't make decisions the same fight of the night, but he wasn't completely against it like he was when he was asked about Carla. So just tell me, what were your biggest takeaways from the fight itself, and what does this mean for Michael Chandler, who's now on a 2-fight losing streak?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough pill to swallow for him, man, because I don't think he's gonna touch that title, to be honest, after what we saw. I mean, he showed a lot of heart, but all the weaknesses and all the holes that only elite fighters will exploit, like Justin Gaethje, were exploited. And those are, I can show you, like, the text I was sending my friends. I called it exactly like it was, except the only thing I was wrong on, I expected Gaethje to knock out Michael Chandler. That didn't work out. But that's more of the fact that I go back again to Gaethje Poirier, where he was having some success, Gaethje was, and then he got knocked out very late. And Trevor Whitman made sure he will never make that mistake again. He mentioned it in the corner at some point during the Ferguson fight. That like, okay, just remember the 5th round. Remember what we did against Poirier. Don't do that. So he had so many spots to finish Chandler, or at least beat him up more in the 3rd round. But especially when you go like the last 45 seconds of the fight, they didn't do anything. That's because I think Gaethje was just like, not gonna make sure. I'm not gonna get clipped right now. I'm winning. I'm not gonna get clipped right now. So what are those holes that they exploited? Chandler, I don't know why he doesn't. He just throws everything in the kitchen sink at people in round 1 because his cardio doesn't hold up.
Yeah,
I noticed that with a lot of Henry Hoops fighters, by the way. I don't know what, and he calls for in the middle of the rounds. He always tells them like, calm down, like stop throwing everything behind every shot. But every fighter of his always does that. And the leg kicks. The leg kicks are something I called for. I'm like Gaethje as Khabib
oh my
said,
gosh, they were debilitating leg kicks.
Yeah,
Chandler kept having to switch stances because they were so strong. I felt bad. Oh.
Yeah, and he's been debilitated by leg kicks many times in Bellator. Where like he significantly slows down after rounds, like halfway through round 2 and onward. So you're going against Gaethje, who, according to Khabib, has the hardest leg kicks he's ever faced. So that's gonna happen. It's gonna be exploited. And what is cool though, what I don't think Chandler expected is, Gaethje's wrestling to be, or wrestling defense at least, to be that good. Because he always talks about it. He was a collegiate wrestler. He was like a Division 1, right? He has won many championships there, but he's never used it in UFC necessarily. Got tested and he's got it. Only Khabib could probably take him down.
Yeah, Justin Gaethje is an all-American wrestler. I remember the reason why.
I feel like I'm dressed up like Michael Chandler today. This is like something he would wear. Yeah,
you honestly look like his twin. Did you just fight? Are you feeling okay? Like, or you just got back from the hospital?
I got the neck injury, but that's it. That's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Justin Gaethje, his nickname is the highlight for a reason. He knows that the people in the UFC want to see headbangers, want to see all action stuff. So he doesn't resort to his wrestling. He actually prefers to stand up and trade, which is kind of scary sometimes, because you see in his, like, I don't know if he always spoke the way he speaks, but sometimes, his reactions are a little like delayed and stuff, and you kind of want him to maybe not get hit so much. But I mean, if he takes pride in that type of strategy, then good for him. I think it kind of reminds me of Brian Ortega, who's always so willing to take damage and show how tough you are. But if you want a long, sustainable career, it's kind of one of those things where you have to pick and choose when you're getting hit so much. But another thing I wanted to say was, Casey Ladon from MMA Fighting, he mentioned how it was funny how Michael Chandler lasted 3 rounds with Justin Gaethje, who has so much power, yet he was knocked out in the first round against Patricio Pitbull at Bellator. And it's just like, MMA is weird. You never know what's going to happen, because you can't really do MMA math. It'll never add up.
Yeah, it never does. And then what's AJ McKee going to do? Like, that's another
I
question.
I can't wait until we see some cross promotions with AJ McKee. That'll be so fun.
Come on, Dana, please. Dana, man.
Right?
He gives the fans what they want, but he also doesn't. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he has so much to work with the UFC. He has like no reason to do the cross promotions, because, and Kamaru was mentioning how he wants to do boxing with Canelo, and Dana was like, he doesn't want to box Canelo.
No. I'll give that definitely 3 rounds max. 3 rounds.
Yeah, just 2 completely different sports. But before we transition into boxing, we have to talk about at least 1 or 2 of these prelims, because we had 9 prelim fights, and then they started out a little bit slow. 3 unanimous decisions to start, but then the violence just increased throughout the night. 6 knockouts in a row. What was the fight that people were sleeping on that showed out last night?
So my pick here was Bobby Green, and people might be surprised why. First of all, this is besides the point, but Bobby Green is one of my favorite fighters to watch, always, at all times, win or lose. It's because
he was great on the microphone too.
Yeah, he always is. He's great on Instagram too. He's sometimes slightly too philosophical, but I get it. He's been through a lot. But fighting with his hands down, he manages to hide his punches. I even watching from TV, usually it's easier to read punches, for me at least, on the TV than it is if you're standing in front of someone. But even on the TV, I don't know where the next punch is going to come from or what it's going to be. It's because his hands are down. And to fight like that, you have to be in the Matrix. And he's in the Matrix all the time. And that's what made his fight against Fiziev so great, because Fiziev is the Matrix. That's a fight he could have won. And I scored it for Fiziev. But, the rounds were very close that were won. And I'm going to look at his record quick. I'm just going to pull it up, because Bobby Green has been, for me, robbed many times. He could easily be ranked already. He should have been ranked 3 fights ago, But, tough out against Fiziev. This was a setup for him, I think. This is a setup for him to break into the rankings. Ali Aquinta focused on his real estate, Inactive, I think last time he fought was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was great to see.
Someone who mixes it up. So, getting a finish, also... Not like Bobby Green. Bobby Green is not much of a finisher. He peppers you with shots. Maybe if he's in a 5-round fight, he can finish someone. But this is clinical. Like, this is exactly what he needed as well at this point in his career. So that's why I think the finish itself, the fact that it was a finish against a high-level fighter who's fought for the title, by the way, that's maybe the marquee win right now for him.
Yeah, and I was just so impressed that he was able to fight with his hands down by his hips, like you said, and that the advantage with that is that Alaquinta couldn't really see where or when or what angle the punches were coming from. So you have that advantage offensively, but defensively, obviously, you're missing your hand, so you just have to be able to slip that much smoother and slicker. Very impressed by Bobby Green. Really liked his message at the end of the post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, just saying you can get through anything. He didn't have a mom. He didn't have a dad, lost his brother, lost his grandma. So now I'm going to have to do a bunch of research and look up his interviews or maybe ask questions to you about him because you seem to have followed his career for a long time.
This is like the first time I've seen him like this, and I think he just believes because this win is that meaningful to him. And that big in front of so many fans at Madison Square Garden. Maybe this is the first moment. It's crazy to say because he's 35 years old. Maybe this is the first moment he says, "Oh, I made it." He thinks he made it now. You know. But look, lastly about his record, I'm looking at Drakkar Klose. That one I think was a robbery. Francisco Trinaldo, he could have won. Thiago Moises, he won 100%, but it's a loss. Fiziev, tough one. You know, that's a loss, but it was so close. So he could easily be have at least 4 or 5 losses less on his record, so
yeah,
fantastic.
Well, for my pick, I chose the same name as me, Alex Pereira. He is the middleweight that came from Glory Kickboxing. He's a guy that has wins over Israel Adesanya, and he showed out. I mean, Jesus Christ, that flying knee. I tweeted, I was like, inject that flying knee into my veins. That was the hard shit we needed last night. And it happened, I think, at the end of the second round. Yeah, round 2 of flying knee.
Beginning, like immediately, within the first, I think, 30 seconds of the second round.
Yeah, he really laid it on him. And honestly, he has such a great kickboxing body, having that long length to him. And he was able to get out of those compromising positions when he was taken down. I'm just excited to see what he does in the middleweight division, because we kind of need some new faces in the middleweight division. When you're looking at Paulo Costa and his fight against Marvin Vettori, yeah, Marvin won, but we saw Marvin fight Izzy twice now, and he wasn't really able to do much. So we kind of need some new names in the hat to see who can really contend for a middleweight title against Izzy. And I think that matchup, they're both so tall for the division, it would be really interesting to see those two go at it.
Yeah, and you forgot to mention that Alex Pereira, well, MMA fans know he's beat Izzy twice, and one of them was a knockout, and that's the only person to ever knock out Izzy. Now, also at the beginning, I'm very familiar with Glory. I was familiar with Alex Pereira, but I must admit I haven't watched a lot of his fights live. But he seems like Joe Rogan was like a huge Glory fan, and it was raving on about him. Like as soon as he was walking out, like, this is the most sophisticated striker I've ever seen. Such a delight, a great addition to the UFC roster. My whole thing, because I had a bet on too, and I had Pereira by knockout, but I was just hoping like, please don't get taken down. What happens like early in the fight immediately gets taken down, but then he sprawls and defends it. I'm like, fuck. This might end up being one of those like 3 rounds against the cage kind of fight, where this is being pressed up against the cage. But no, I saw Michailidis was gassed also after the first round, and then just his response to being held down or like wrestled the whole round was like, okay, I'm just gonna time you so perfectly, and you know, when you know you have that one shot, only one opportunity, or else you might be on your back, you might get taken down. He landed that knee. That timing is like, we talk about Corey Sandhagen knocking out Edgar. That was like, wow. Masvidal, same thing. This just doesn't just happen. For him, it was calculated. He knew that was gonna happen. He was waiting for that moment. He knew it exactly. It wasn't a reaction. It was like, I'm gonna pull him in. I'm gonna make sure he comes in so that I can do this. And that shows that leaves a lot to the imagination.
Glory literally tweeted a few seconds after the knockout, they were like, yeah, we know. And they put a highlight of him doing that same switch knee in one of his Glory fights. So can't wait to see what he does in the middleweight division. We did run a poll on my Instagram asking what the audience thought the biggest sleeper fight was, we have 29 people for Alex Pereira, 7 for Bobby Green, 8 for Ian Gary, and then 4 for Nasruddin Imavov. So this was Ian Gary's debut. Obviously gave a shout out to Conor McGregor. He wants to be the next big thing. So what were your thoughts on his knockout?
It was it was McGregor-esque, right? But then with the right hand instead of the left. Because it's like, I think McGregor also tweeted like, beautiful step to the side, and because he was losing that round very handily. He was getting manhandled, man. Like, he was getting beat up, and his face showed it too. But it just shows that he stayed composed.
He's so white.
That's what it. That's yeah. That's
he
awful.
looked
What
like
happens,
Rudolph.
right? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't wear it well. He seems like he has one of those noses that just bleeds with every impact, right? So I wouldn't read too much into it. But he was getting beat up, and he lost a round to me. But it's methodical. It was like, over my dead body, I'm gonna, snipe you. It's a sniper hand. It was like McGregor-esque, and he's very young. He's like 23, right? So,
yeah, he's really young. It's crazy how many of these debuts kind of end in these either round 1 or round 2 knockouts. When it doesn't seem like they're gonna win it too. I feel like Paddy Pimblett, he had his moments of like, oh shit, this Paddy kid, he's so hyped up, he might lose it, and then he ends up getting the knockout. And then Ian Gary, you have him who was getting, is his name Jordan
Williams?
Who's the guy that he fought? Jordan Williams. He was able to close the distance and clip him a few times, and he just got sloppy within the last few seconds, literally less than 10 seconds before he got hit with that counter and ended up getting knocked out. So it's crazy that he got the knockout, but what a debut.
Exactly. Yeah. No. It's but I think the reasoning behind this, Jordan Williams threw everything out in the first round because he was on I think he's in a 2-fight losing streak after, so people forget. So Jordan Williams came into the UFC through the Contender Series. He had participated once, lost. Did he lose or did he win and not get it? I think he lost, but he was so motivated he came back, and then he won his fight second time around on Contender Series. Very motivated guy. You could tell he just lives for the sport. He loves it. But he has what is this condition? Diabetes. He's diabetic. So that really affects his training, and apparently his cardio as well. So his cardio, his gas tank, empties out in the second and the third round usually. So I thought that's how long it would take for him to get finished. He was on a 2-fight losing streak. He wants to stay in the UFC, so he throws everything at it. That's just the mentality, I think, and that's, let's welcome this kid into the UFC the hard way. Let me keep my job, but unfortunately, things don't always play out like you want. Yeah.
Yeah, and the people have spoken. I guess the answers for the biggest sleeper fight were kind of all over the place, but Alex Pereira was definitely the number 1 pick from my people on Twitter and Instagram. But honestly, my Instagram probably has more casuals, and then my Twitter for MMA Twitter has more of the hardcores, and a couple of people were doing more Bobby Green for my Twitter. So yeah, those two were definitely super entertaining. And finally, we're going to be able to talk a little bit about boxing, not as much as we did for the Fury and Tyson trilogy, but Canelo Alvarez, representing Mexico, he became the first ever undisputed male champion in the 4-belt 2005, Terrence Crawford 2017, Alexander Usyk in 2018, Josh Taylor in 2021.
But in terms of anticipation, the Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder kind of feel to it. Canelo wants to make a statement, and I know he's gonna finish this guy. He always waits till later on to really put it on someone. And here's how it goes. I feel like he slow cooks people, and it's weird to say sometimes because he's so ferocious of a striker, Canelo is. But round 1, he'll start debilitating one of your finding out one of your holes. Round 2, he'll add another one. Okay, let's see if we can exploit this hole. Okay, now it's a download of information all the way to the later rounds where he then just puts it on you and exploits every single gap in your game throughout the whole round. So that's what happened. I think he exposed. It took him till round 10 or 11 to have exposed every single gap in Caleb Plant's game and lay it on him in every way. It's what was it was Callum Smith fight? I think the Callum Smith fight. Have you ever seen the picture of Callum Smith's left arm after that fight? It was like
No, I'm gonna have to look it up.
a huge bulge like sticking out of his arm because so his
Gonna get a
main big
picture for
weapon.
it.
Yeah, this guy was so much longer than Canelo was, and his biggest weapon was his left hook. And that powerful left hook has put a lot of people out. So the entire fight, Canelo was targeting the left arm, the whole time, until he couldn't throw it anymore. It was so destroyed that he just couldn't use it anymore, and that's how he wins. He just knows
Very smart.
how to dismantle every weapon.
He has to be a cerebral fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has to be a very cerebral fighter considering he's not the tallest. He doesn't have the longest reach. When you're looking at the tail of the tape between Caleb Plant and Canelo Alvarez, Canelo has a 3.5-inch reach disadvantage. And then he's also 5'7.5". Caleb Plant was 6'1". Yet he's still able to get inside, be able to break him down. And it was just one of those things where Canelo predicted that it was going to be tough in the first round, which I think we saw Caleb being able to keep it competitive. And then Canelo predicted that he would get a knockout in the 8th round or something like that. And Caleb Plant showed out. You know, he has the support system of Jordan Plant. They stayed focused this whole time. On one of their anniversaries, they didn't do anything. She just wanted him to get the win. So you knew Caleb Plant knew this was his time to shine. His first time ever really being on this big Showtime pay-per-view platform, and all eyes were on him. And he was focused. And he even said at one point, I forget what the quote was. You don't convince people through your words, you convince them through your actions, because everyone in the media says like, oh, how do you feel about being this underdog? You know, no one really believes in you. And he's just like, you know what? I'll let my actions prove it. And we did see the heart of Caleb Plant last night, but it just wasn't enough. Canelo Alvarez is the best boxer in this generation.
And I mean, it's a matter of volume as well. Like what I was seeing is Plant countering, throwing 1 or 2 shots at a time, and then he gets peppered like with at least 4, you know, by Canelo, and almost every one of them lands, because he has such a weird ability to twist his body and arm in a way that he's gonna hit you like body, liver, face, head, chin, boom, 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 like all within a span of 1 second. And he managed to hide his body shots, like his body shot feints, and the way he looks at the body, but then throws the uppercut as if it's going to the body and then goes to the head. That was a huge thing that surpassed that Philly shell that Caleb Plant was trying the whole time. He was trying to protect his face the whole time. Then he gets hit with the body, and then once the body is fainted, kept lowering his guard and getting hit with like sort of a side, like an uppercut hook kind of thing. Well, that only Canelo can do, you know.
Yeah.
So now he's inventing sort of punches.
Yeah, I definitely agree to a certain extent volume played a part, but I think Caleb did have a high volume, like high output, but he just wasn't nearly as powerful. Like you could even hear that Canelo's body punches were hitting much harder than Caleb's. And even though Canelo doesn't have the highest output, he has lower output but higher accuracy. So when he is using the energy to throw punches, he's doing it when he knows he'll land. He's using it not just throwing whatever to try to get some punches just to throw them out there, if that makes sense.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I definitely saw Caleb throwing as much as he could. They just weren't having as much of an impact.
Yeah, there's that too. I mean, but do you think he still was maybe one of the fighters that had the most power that has faced Canelo? You know, like but except like he just wasn't able to take the damage, and nobody really has been able to, except for Floyd Mayweather, been able to, young Canelo even, take the power that comes with every strike that Canelo throws. You know.
I definitely think that's what was interesting coming into this fight and why it was probably the biggest boxing fight of the years, because the fighters that Canelo has had issues against in the past are those slick boxers, Erislandy Lara, Austin Trout, who else? Floyd Mayweather, and then Gennady Golovkin. They're all kind of these slick boxers, and Caleb Plant kind of had some of those assets coming in. And then you add on top of that the height discrepancy, which is why I think a lot of people, if anything, were to doubt Canelo, they might have on this one. But again, Canelo Alvarez proves them all wrong, and he retains all his belt and gets the IBF belt, making him the undisputed super middleweight champion, the first ever Mexican one. So go Mexico!
So you're proud of
So
that.
proud to be a Mexican and Filipino. Pacquiao's gone now, but now
Yeah.
we get Canelo, so it's awesome.
There'll be some more Filipino fighters too sometime. Some champions.
Yeah,
There is.
I'm excited. Do you have any final thoughts on everything?
Yeah, the Canelo one, and this relates to MMA as well. I mean, people always want to hold on to like when they have the GOAT conversations and who are the best, and they always like try to dismiss like new people against the legends. When you say like, oh, this guy's better than Mike Tyson, for example, like they'll be like, oh, you're crazy, you're better than Ali or whatever, you know. But why is that so crazy? Because like technologically we've advanced, the sport has advanced, we have a lot more knowledge now. You know, about how to train, how to implement nutrition or whatever. So no doubt, like those new people coming out are gonna eventually be better than those people in the past. So I think we just need to get rid of that notion and think, you know, Canelo might be the best Mexican boxer of all time. You know, he still has a while to go. He still has names to beat, but you know, inevitably I think he's gonna do it. And once he does, we should put him up there. Like he is the best Mexican boxer of all time. I think,
Yeah,
you know,
definitely
people should just,
excited to
let's, you
see
know,
it.
just don't hold on to those legends for too much, you know.
Yeah, a matchup against Jamal Charlo or David Benavidez would be super fun. But what a night. I think that was probably the biggest night in combat sports of the entire year. I think another night that kind of compared to it, not really actually, just it kind of reminded me of having MMA fights and boxing at the same time was Vasily Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez versus, and then on the same night you had Korean Zombie versus the return of Brian Ortega. So that was another big fight. Obviously does not even compare to the MMA side of things.
Oh no, this is the one. this was a good combined
this was
night. Yeah.
Huge.
What
I
did
just
we
had
have
both
on?
of my laptops out, like looking at both.
Oh yeah, true. No, never mind. For Wilder Fury, we had Duran Rodriguez. We didn't have a pay-per-view. Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, so that one
know.
wasn't super big, but yeah, that wraps up our 5 topics for today. Nick Corey over here breaking down everything we need to know, especially on the boxing side, of course. I'm Alex Wendling. We're going to start doing a little bit more polls on Instagram, trying to get more audience engagement with you guys. So if there's any specific topics that you guys want to go through, let us know. And please like and subscribe this video. We should definitely put something in the video, in the middle of it, where it's just like, hey, if you're enjoying this video, like this, like, or something.
It
so
could also
that
be an ad.
we can
We'd
do
like
it
a
in the
sponsor,
middle.
please. Please.
Yes. Welcome, DraftKings.
And we might do the betting
breakdowns. Thank you guys
breakdowns.
so much for the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So we might be ending adding some betting breakdowns to this, before a pay-per-view especially. And I want to start doing what I did. I did a post yesterday, and it almost landed. It's one off. But I'm going to do a 10 times accumulator where you can, 10 times, what is it called? Not quadruple, but tenfold your money. We're going to try to land that together and we make money together.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I have not bet since I lost betting to Vasily Lomachenko, but I definitely want to get more into it. And if anyone can talk about it, it's definitely Nick, because he's betting on every single fight there is to bet on. So if you can't wait for that content, make sure to subscribe. I'm Alex Wendling. That's Nick Corey. We'll see you next time on the next big pay-per-view.
Next time.